Chapter 31. Roshan led us into the shop, then Master Welling threw up both hands. Flames burst to life inside the hanging lanterns situated along the walls. Crystals of every color I could imagine pulsed as if they breathed as we passed their cases en route to the front counter. Mixed energies eased my breathing while simultaneously weighing on my shoulders as they had when I left the shop the first time. "Why do they affect me?" I asked, breaking the long silence of our trek down the street from the temple. Without turning or stopping, Roshan raised her left hand and passed it over a case. The gems inside glowed brighter. "These are crystals bathed in the essence of the light." She raised the opposite hand, and darker crystals of deep reds and purples pulsed. Her hand trembled before she dropped it. "And these of the shadow." Master Welling took an interest.
"Tell me, how do they affect you, Tess?"
I halted, then turned. "Why? Don't they affect you?"
"They do, but at my level the light gems present a whisper compared to the discomfort I would have felt when I was a boy."
"And the shadow crystals?" I drew a deep, easy breath as I passed those Roshan had indicated when her hand shook.
"They feed my essence, but in the same whisper."
The vague answer tapped a well of impatience in my chest. What is their purpose? We cleared the cases, then stepped into a small room in the back. A basin with 3 cleansing crystals stood in one corner, and a clean, simple wooden countertop was covered with tomes. I recognized them as the tomes I'd brought from the cave, the ones I'd discovered in the below. Roshan gestured at cushioned chairs parked beneath a round table. The priestess interlocked her fingers as she rested her arms on the table. "The crystals are socketed into weapons and armor to provide attribute bonuses and other advantages, like the runes you discovered when carving them into your staff." "You know about that?" Roshan flashed Drasen Welling a knowing smile. "Despite your unique situation and our desires to keep it close to our robes, the masters and the people of the Fowler Foundation keep no secrets from one another."
"None of relevance, anyway,"
Welling added. Roshan chuckled. "Damned shadow lovers with their secrets and underhandedness." "Are we bad?" I asked, recalling how they'd said I was more susceptible to darkness's draw with an affinity like mine. Roshan lay her hand on mine. "I was joking, Tess. Master Welling is one of the most decent and gentle men I've met." Her eyes adopted a distant gaze targeted somewhere over my shoulder. "Until recently, I'd associated the shadow practice with demons, but when I was brought to Rubal, my perspective changed. You see, I was raised in a village in Lao, where magic suppression was also common. The war chiefs were just much better at it, so I knew little other than what my master taught me in secret." Once again, Roshan illustrated how I'd underestimated her. Somehow, my father had always lent the impression that priestesses were pious creatures who never did wrong, were never deceitful. Until our farm had been invaded, I suspected he'd hoped I'd one day become one. But he always kept talk about my future short, non-committal. Welling cocked an eyebrow to half-mast.
"So, shall we get to it?"
Roshan leaned back in her chair, but her arms remained resting on the table. "Tess, I have been in touch with my adopted family back at the Foundation. There I have a council of my own of sorts. In the wake of your visit, there was much talk. Your attempts to hide your dominant affinity didn't go unnoticed." Warmth rushed to my face. I lowered my head and dropped my hands into my lap. "I'm afraid my lack of control was apparent. I'm sorry." She waved the sentiment away. "A trifle. As Drasen pointed out, we all have our secrets. And besides, I know why you kept it to yourself. It was new to you." Master Welling had a different take, even if to the same end.
"Never lower your head in shame in my presence again. Do you understand?"
Although his features weren't wrinkled in anger, the stony, expressionless gaze he set on me communicated clearly enough. "Yes, Master."
"You will call me Drasen when we're away from the other masters."
Roshan nodded. "And I now am Roshan to you. This is acceptable even in their presence, as I am the spiritual advisor for the Academy, and I insisted from the beginning the young men and women feel comfortable with me." "Well, I do." "I'm pleased to know this. We are close to the same age, Tess. This is not lost on me, but you should be mindful that I am your guide, and although I would happily come to call you my sister someday, this will be earned. Do you understand?" "I think so." "Good. Now, I've talked with the master of the Fowler Foundation. His wife is a caster with high affinity in shadow magic like you, except higher. Drassen Welling's head whipped around.
Higher? You never told me.
Roshan shot him a glare.
Right. Got it.
When I spoke with the master and his betrothed, they insisted you be kept here until you've honed your skills. But in time, they would welcome you, if you choose a life of adventure. They share interests with the Academy and helped us restructure it. The master is one of our patrons and is very generous. He sounds wonderful. When he's not acting like a total noob, he is. Noob? She waved her dismissive hand a second time. A word from my culture meaning a young adventurer lacking common sense. It's not important. I gave a false nod of understanding. How could someone so generous and who oversaw such a wondrous place as the Instance Foundation be so lacking? Master Welling misinterpreted my expression.
If it makes you feel any better, I haven't made his acquaintance yet either.
He flashed Roshan a look that wasn't entirely devoid of humor.
These people keep secrets like demons.
Never compare my people to demons, Roshan said. Then she cleared her throat. Now, where was I? Oh, it's important that you focus on your training, Tess. While there are many promising students at the Academy, someone like you could be of great aid to all magic users throughout the countryside of Eastern Rubal. How so? Master Welling drummed his fingers on the table.
For starters, you could be an example. Convincing people to give up their children for a higher calling would be difficult, but...
You would want me to recruit magic users for the Academy? He nodded.
Perhaps. But your purposes could be many beyond that.
Roshan slid the palms of her hands across the table in wide swaths, as if testing the smoothness of the grain. Turmoil surrounds us, Tess. It goes far beyond the politics with the king. The bands of mercenaries have gained footholds in towns to the north, even though the demons retreated to the Plague Barrens in the wake of a recent conflict of great darkness. Packs have risen from the depths to snatch children from their parents. We don't know why. A great flash of realization slammed into my consciousness like I'd fallen from my horse. What if I could tell you why? Roshan's eyebrows knitted together. How would you? Demons killed my father. They burned our home to the ground and pursued me. If what you say is true, and they would be attracted to those with high shadow affinities.
You would stick out like a giant crystal spire.
Welling slapped the table.
Of course.
Roshan clamped her temples with the thumb and middle finger of one hand. How did I not think of this?
You've had a lot on your mind,
Welling said.
Our focus on Tess was for different reasons.
Perhaps, but I should be attentive. She snapped her fingers, then leveled the index finger on me. As should you. The masters can say what they like, and I respect that Lyra was brought north to be the interim leader of the Academy. But we must have your word you will follow our every instruction. I nodded. She shook her head. No, you don't have a full understanding yet. It is imperative, Tess, that you obey every command. You must come to me every day after your training so we might increase your light affinity as well. Your shadow power is undeniable, but with your potential, we have the opportunity to raise your light affinity and create balance. One need not contradict the other. You mean they don't cancel each other out? We don't know, Tess. You don't know? My jaw dropped. How will you create this balance if you don't know it's possible?
The balance is possible,
Drassen said.
It's just that, with your high potential, there's always the likelihood that increasing your light affinity could affect your shadow power.
It could? You're not listening, Roshan said. We don't know anything for certain, but in light of what happened to you at the Foundation during the invasion, we must act. I lowered my voice to a mutter. Great. But be heartened. I am powerful in the light, and Drassen is unrivaled at the Academy in the shadow arts. Master Welling swept his hand over his lips, then dropped his chin.
Except by Tess.
I gave a nervous chuckle. Roshan laughed. But she doesn't command your knowledge of magic, and that's why we're here. Drassen raised his chin.
So what do you say, Tess? Might this life intrigue you?
I nodded so hard something popped in my neck. Roshan pulled out the third high chair, then sat at my side opposite Welling. Now, if it pleases Drassen, I would illuminate you. Drassen nodded. I didn't. What do you mean, illuminate me? In order to find then maintain the balance between magic disciplines, you must understand what you contend with. There must be a foundation upon which you can build. Do you understand? I think so. Close enough. Recall the event at the foundation when the demon encroached upon you and Shabana. I grunted. If I have to. You have to. She patted my shoulder. That it's a dark memory is a good sign. I understand you lost time, is that right? When I nodded, she shared a short glance with Drasen before continuing. Describe what happened. The demon appeared behind us as we entered the cave. It raised its hand and cast some kind of fire spell. I paused. It gets a little foggy there. Roshan nodded, understanding. Try closing your eyes. Breathe. Focus. I closed my eyelids, then drew a deep breath into my lungs as I imagined the grassy landscape of the Foundation's raised plateau. Next, Shabana, then the demon's flaming hand. I spoke as I conjured the scene. His hand burst into flame. A strange, reddish hue engulfed my vision. Heat surged throughout my body. I shoved Shabana to the side when he waved the fiery hand toward her. The image faded to black. That's when it all goes dark. When I came to, it was if I'd slept for a moment, but without the grogginess that usually comes at first light. That's when Shabana dragged me into the cave. Master Welling spoke from the other side as my eyes fluttered open.
And when you came to, the demon was gone. You'd vanquished it.
That's what Shabana says. Drasen nodded.
Well, that definitely confirms our suspicions. She was channeling the energy from below. The power overwhelmed her.
Roshan nodded agreement, but then shrugged. I took it to mean the happening didn't fall into the realm of her expertise. Drasen continued.
When you dueled against the young man in Master Renard's class, did your vision adopt this hue you mentioned? Did your heat rise?
Again, I closed my eyes. Yes, but it didn't overwhelm me that time.
Did you do anything to suppress it?
I shook my head. No, I was consumed in the moment. I pressed the attack. Roshan leaned in. Perhaps because the duel limits the damage one can receive, the darkness didn't fully present its power? Drasen tilted his chin toward his chest, then shook his head.
Priestess, with all due respect, I fear your bias toward the light confuses the issue. It's not the darkness upon which she draws, it is the shadow. Darkness is the antithesis of the light. Although it draws upon shadow for power, its use of it is not exclusive.
Do not presume to teach me the differences between the light and darkness. Despite the priestess's low growl, Welling maintained a calm tone.
Then do not confuse the power that feeds my magic with the evil intent that is the other. There is great difference between darkness and shadow.
Roshan's mouth dropped open. Her eyes flitted between us. Then her shoulders dropped. Apologies, Drasen. My words were ill-conceived. I do not equate you with darkness. Drasen waved a dismissive hand.
I know you don't, Roshan. We wouldn't be here if you did.
The priestess nodded agreement. He uncrossed his legs to rest his elbows on his knees.
It's a good lesson for our new acolyte. Tess, you have to understand these differences to know your power. Is my meaning clear?
I nodded. Very clear. Darkness draws upon shadow for its power, but that doesn't make shadow evil in nature. And thank goodness for that. Drasen chortled.
Agreed. Otherwise, I'd likely grow horns.
Roshan cackled. I was just imagining you with horns. They wouldn't suit. He chuckled. I joined in. Roshan calmed, then turned in her chair, her eyes fixed on the glowing crystals closest to her. Although light is a powerful source of magic, and the ley lines feed its users with great energy, it requires discipline to wield it with efficiency. As I've been made to understand, evil chooses shadow because it is more easily wielded. Are you saying shadow is more powerful? I tilted my head. Roshan shook hers. I presume nothing. It's easier to access is all. I've seen powerful casters channel shadow magic in ways I'd never imagined when I came to Rubal.
The mere assertion.
Drasen grumbled.
Like it's a shallow well to be drawn from.
I ignored him. Like the mistress of the Fowler Foundation. She nodded. That's exactly who I had in mind. and she drew the power to herself with fury such that it left me in utter surprise. A light caster of low level wouldn't have been capable of such force. So that's why you want me to understand the difference. Because the heat I sensed, the way the world went dark. Drasen nodded.
Yes. Even though I've never tapped the source, I didn't even know if it truly existed. Master Renard's elven tomes claim an inexperienced caster who does so could be consumed by its power. I derive from his protestations. His fear of this is why he doesn't want you to return to class. I theorize the reason you don't recall this expression of your power is it overwhelmed you.
So summarizing all you've said, the source is the actual energy created by the heat of the lava lines far below us, but drawing upon it could overwhelm not only the caster's enemies but the caster herself. He nodded.
I can simplify it for you further. It's the hot energy that communes with mana to express shadow magic into the world.
Congratulations. You have completed a legacy quest, the Source. You learn the Source's power is fed by the heat of the lava lines deep in the crust of Enora. Reward, 3000 XP. You have learned a new agnostic offensive spell from the Shadow Arts, Chained Fire. Tap into the Source to cast molten rays at your enemy. These rays bounce to additional enemies up to 3 times, degrading 50% power with each jump. Type, Shadow Arts spell. Level, NA. Cost, 100 mana per 2 seconds. Damage, 23 to 30 on impact. 5 to 10 HP per second while channeling. Discipline, Shadow. Duration, channeled. Cooldown, NA. Prerequisites, 90% or higher affinity in Shadow. 90% or higher magic potential. Note, Shadow Art spells are a rare breed available only to those of exceptionally high affinities in shadow magic. While they provide the advantage of high power, overcasting will prove dangerous and even fatal to the untrained caster. A golden flash cast a bright halo around me, then funneled into the air. Triumphant music filled my ears. A bold golden 7 appeared before my eyes, then zipped into the distance until it became so small it vanished. Congratulations, you have reached level 7. Since you have not chosen a class, your attribute points are assigned to Constitution, +2 Constitution. You are awarded 1 elective attribute point. You have 4 elective attribute points to spend. You must visit an attributes trainer to spend these attribute points. Your stamina has increased. Your hit points have increased. How did you level? Roshan asked. Something called a legacy quest. I had to learn about the source. I bowed toward Master Welling despite my seated position. Thank you, Master Welling. He nodded.
Congratulations, Tess.
The goddess blesses you, Contessa, Roshan added. May you forever be happy and contented in the light. Thank you. Drasen squinted an eye.
As much as I'd love to revel in this advancement, my mind still pricks at me about the event at the Foundation.
What do you want to know?
Did the heat remain when you came to?
I nodded. It burned hot, but wasn't painful. I soaked in a pool in the cave. It dissipated after a time. He nodded as if I'd filled in a missing piece of a puzzle.
I suspect your inability to channel the magic fully kept it from dispersing. What came of this demon, according to Shabana?
I kicked it across the plateau. It tumbled down the natural stairs there.
How far is that?
If I had to guess, 75 yards. Welling glanced at Roshan, who nodded agreement. Then he shook his head.
All that expression of the shadow, and still its power remained after.
Is that good? Bad?
I have no idea, but I must admit I'm taken aback.
Roshan cleared her throat. If she channels with such power as you imply, does it mean she must cast with such intent that it clears from her?
I can only assume so, but I can't say with any authority.
And does that mean the expression of her power would have been even greater if she'd known how to channel the shadow? Drasen stared at me for about 5 heartbeats. Something in the way his expression slackened led me to believe he debated whether to say the words that flooded his mind, but he eventually did.
That I can say almost with certainty. We must teach Tess to cast from her mana pool. She must learn shadow magic, spells. She must practice regularly. Then she must raise her light affinity to see if it counteracts the negative effect she described. Only then can she learn to control the other.
The other? Sounds so ominous. Roshan interjected. If Tess channels this power without tapping her mana pool, what does this mean?
I suspect she tapped her mana pool,
Drasen said simply.
Tess, open your combat sub-tab, then bring up the text from our duel in the chapel.
After navigating to the specified tab, I scanned to the point where I cast my binding spell. I see it.
Now, you can imagine the word expanded for more detail. Read the result to us.
You cast flame bindings. Minus 50 mana. Drasen Welling resists flame bindings. You recover 16 mana. Wisdom score, 4 times 4 mana per tick. Bonus effect, mana funnel. Drawing the power of the lava lines, your mana recovery rate is tripled, plus 48 mana. Drasen cupped his temples with one hand, then drew his thumb and forefinger toward each other across his forehead. What's it mean? I asked. Roshan muttered. Amazing. I've never heard of it. I glanced at her, but her focus remained on the glowing crystals. I turned my gaze on Drasen, but he stared at the floor. Are you going to keep me in the dark? I looked back and forth between the two of them. What's it mean? Roshan finally set her sienna eyes on me. This is good practice for you. Learn patience. I swallowed, faced the shop door, then waited. From the corner of my eye, Roshan nodded. Good. Welling's head came up.
The lava lines empowered your mana recovery. Even though you spent mana to cast the spell like any of us, your rate of recovery was so fast, no one saw your bar move.
Is that good? The two masters shared a long gaze. Welling smiled, then Roshan chuckled and raised one shoulder in a half shrug. In unison, they said, yes. It was Roshan who escorted me back to the dormitory this time. Although she'd always moved with such even strides and matching determination to appear as if she floated everywhere, this time the strides were shorter and slower. Questions flooded my mind, but I didn't ask them. She seemed in deep thought, and I thought it might be a good idea to practice my patience instead of rattling off queries like a curious child. Before we reached the chapel en route to the dorms, she finally broke the silence. Her words came as if we'd been in the middle of a discussion, or as if she continued the thoughts traversing her mind aloud. Darkness is trickery, the purest evil you can imagine. It shrouds itself in deceit, even impersonates the light. My master, Mitwa was his name, warned me each day of how it could pervade our lives without our knowledge. Only through our firm resolve and loyalty to the goddess could we shield ourselves from its influence. I hung on every word, like a good pupil. Then I carried Solara's divine presence with me through a dungeon in the Plague Barrens, to the hinterlands of the north, and into a dark place I care not to recall. I even wielded her light in defense of Tralsby, and faced the demon hordes from on a high wall. But just when I think I've grasped the depths of its power, you come along. I wasn't sure how to respond. Trepidation raised goose pimples on my arms. Roshan noticed. Good. You should be wary. I wouldn't use words Master Welling might interpret as discouraging, and I won't try to sway you from your path, because in your potential lies our own. What do you mean? She stopped on the far side of the temple, and I turned to face her. I've seen shadow power wielded to the ends of the greater good, so I know it holds much potential in our continuing struggles against the darkness in this world. You mean like the demons who invaded my farm? The men who pillaged the countryside? Yes, but you only see the tip of the spear. If I've learned anything in these last months, it's that I was stupid. I underestimated the extensive evil in this world. Dark beings who mask their attributes so as to gain the advantage of their enemies' underestimations, scrying for magic users, kidnapping, then enslaving them, or worse. What's worse than slavery? Torture? She lowered her voice almost to a whisper. Levation? What's levation? She shook her head. You have so much to learn, Tess, and among the things you must grasp is that sometimes it's best to remain silent. So what I tell you now is best left between us, lest others repeat the errors of the past. Agreed? I nodded, but shivers burst between my shoulders and neck in waves. Levation is an alchemic process. Its potions wipe away the memories and advancements of those who imbibe them. What? I splayed fingers against my chest. They remember nothing of who they are? She nodded. An evil thing indeed, but an effective way to control the powerful. I would assume so. Power is a curse as much as a gift, Tess. You must decide, here and now, which will it be? The frustrations of the last 2 days flooded my mind. I blurted my answer with intensity. The demon who murdered my father appears to me in yon field, priestess. I would see him cast into the depths of Hokram's domain to never return. I would see people like you protected so that we might bring more into our fold and fight off the evils you speak of. Although her eyes burst wide at first, she quickly recovered, then leveled them on me at half-mast. And how far would you go to enforce the goddess's will? A lump formed in my throat. I searched for an answer the priestess might want to hear. Then it occurred that dishonesty would serve no one. I'd spouted off like a kid, despite my earlier inward sentiments about maintaining a level, patient disposition. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Roshan grabbed my collar, then pulled me close. I care not about your damned apologies. I care about your life. She dipped her face inches from mine. Do you understand? A blanket of heat swept up my legs, then engulfed the rest of my body as my vision flooded red. You have been empowered. Roshan released me, then stepped away as if my clothes had caught fire while in her grasp. Her voice came softly. Tess, your face floods red. She reached out, hesitated, then pressed the back of her hand to my cheek. You are burning up. Is it happening here, directing itself at me? My stance shifted involuntarily from foot to foot as I teetered. She gripped my collar again. I clenched my fists, forcing them against my hips. The droll voice uttered in my ears, but from inside my head.
Yes, release the energy. Let your power go lest it consume you, child. Kill her.
Beads of sweat popped out on my forehead, then streamed down my cheeks. I blinked away a salty, warm river.
Let your power become unleashed.
Roshan's eyes brimmed with concern. She reached for me, drew her hands back, reached again.
Such weakness. Is this the one you'd have teach you to survive?
A red glow surrounded me, then dissipated. Wisen the Cruel casts charm on you. You have been charmed. My fists unfurled at my hips. My fingers formed claws as my arms rose against my will. The muscles quivered as I resisted, but I found myself powerless to the draw. Then my mind joined in. Weak bitch, die, weak bitch. This time the inner voice was mine, yet I didn't recognize it. Though unspoken, its growl radiated behind my eyes. You... My arms raised higher while more sweat formed on my forehead. You must run. Roshan threw up her arms, twirled them before her so blue halos surrounded them, then created majestic tracers against the backdrop of night. A translucent shield popped into existence around her, humming with energy. She winked her eyes in succession as she stared into mine. You must resist, Tess. The aura surrounding my clawed hands deepened, transitioning from red to mulberry. The heat swarmed across my skin as the energy flooded from my shoulders toward my fingers. Roshan swept her hands across her chest, then pushed them toward me. Roshan casts rebuke. You are no longer charmed. My hands dropped. I spun in a circle, searching. My gaze shifted to the field, then to the chapel as I sought the source I knew was close. I blinked away a new stream of sweat. Roshan's words became a whisper. Her lips moved, but no sound came. The priestess closed her eyes, muttered silent words, maybe of prayer, but I couldn't have cared less. I could have killed her. The words she'd spoken moments before broke through. Darkness is trickery, the purest evil you can imagine. It shrouds itself in deceit, even impersonates the light. She clutched my shoulders after I spun away. The heat bloomed into outright fire as I twisted free of her grasp, then turned toward the field. Bold gold lettering filled the top center of my mind window. Legacy Challenge. Complete this challenge to build your legacy. Destroy or repel the demon invasion. Reward: 4,500 XP, plus 50 reputation with the citizens of Warrington. I cast the message away as hatred burned inside. My own voice came distant, removed. Where are you, bastard demon? I sped off, consumed by my hatred for the obsidian-skinned bastard who'd taken the only family I'd ever known. Come and face me! 2 tiny embers of glowing orange bloomed in the distance. I charged toward them, the fire in me radiating so hot an orange halo bloomed from my body. When I thrust my hands out, they glowed red with a purple halo. The soil beneath me might have melted the bottom of my sandals for the new surge of heat. The demon was a translucent ghost, then it solidified. He raised his arms and clumps burst from the ground. Glowing orange hands stretched from the pits, clutched the ground, then demons raised themselves into view. Their eyes burned like those of their dark master. Energy burst from my hands in blinding red rays that slammed into a minion, disintegrating it before jumping to another and slicing it in half. A third blew backward as the wrath of my fury bounced again. You cast Chained Fire, critical hit, bonus effect, empowered. Lower demon, minus 122 HP, minus 23 HP, plus 69 HP critical, plus 30 HP empowered. You have defeated a level 9 lower demon. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 3. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 4, plus 321 XP. 241 plus 25% plus 80 XP for defeating opponents 2 levels higher. Chained Fire bounces to lower demon. Critical hit, minus 50 damage. Bonus effect, empowered. Lower demon, minus 61 HP, minus 12 HP plus 34 HP critical, plus 15 HP empowered. You have defeated a level 5 lower demon, plus 227 XP. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 5. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 6. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 7. Chained Fire bounces to lower demon. Critical hit. Minus 50% damage. Bonus effect, empowered. Lower demon, minus 61 HP. Minus 12 HP plus 34 HP critical plus 15 HP empowered. You have defeated a level 5 lower demon, plus 224 XP. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 8. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 9. Fingers quivering, I pointed at the tall demon. It wore an obsidian crown that matched the armor I'd mistaken for stony skin. The energy bursting from my hands cut a swath across 2 more demons before reaching him. You are impacted by Lava Surge, minus 10 HP, doubling each second channeling continues. The demon ducked, then rolled under the beam which halved another low minion behind him. A golden flash surrounded me. Triumphant music played in my ears. Still, I charged forward with my arms outstretched. Die, all of you, die! A golden 8 popped into my field of vision, then swooped away. Congratulations, you have reached level 8. 2 more demons met their fiery ends as I reacquired my target and shifted my aim. The congratulatory text swept aside. Warning, 50% health remaining. My knees trembled and I came to a stop. The only way to keep my feet against the exhausting fever coursing through my body was to lock them. The heat surging through me cooled, then recycled itself from my feet up. Warning, 35% health remaining. Back to the depths with you, demon bastard! I thrust my hands forward and the fiery source cooperated, sending the energy through me. But before I could unleash a torrent of hatred into the existing beam, a blue light split the day before me, then bloomed into a portal. Drasen Welling stepped through. He raised his hands, flashing his palms toward me. They glowed purple, but my focus returned to the demon. Heat siphoned up my form as I readied to unleash my newfound love and take my revenge. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 10. Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 11. A cold flash swarmed over my body. Roshan casts Flash Heal 2, plus 160 HP, 252 HP, 95% remaining. Good. Time to reload. You will all die. Potholes appeared in the ground, then the lower demons dropped out of existence. Their leader raised a glassy glove and aimed 2 fingers in my direction.
Now you see, Contessa of Milbury.
The soil opened beneath the demon as he threw his arms in a V. Booming laughter filled my ears. You are no longer empowered. Rage consumed me as I brought my fire to bear. No, you coward! This time, thinner rays burst from the tips of my fingers instead of the centers of my palms. I mentally clawed for more energy from below despite the sweat engulfing me from head to toe. I pushed through the pain in my heaving chest. You must die! Your shadow magic skill has reached rank 12. I fired long after the demon dropped into the soil, pushing all the heat I could muster. My fury burned white hot as my life drained away. Twirling snakes of energy wrapped in a halo of purple shot from Drossenwelling's hands, then slammed into me. Weightlessness ensued. My feet levitated from the ground like Master During's when he cast a levitate spell. My eyes drooped, then an overwhelming shroud of sleepiness crept into them. "No!" I screamed as I focused my energy on the vanishing black demon. "No, it must die!" Then the world faded to black.